The first thing she felt wasn't anger. It was the weight of every eye in the courtroom, settling on her like a verdict already decided. Ava Carter stood at the defense table, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. She had spent years building herself into someone who could not be easily shaken, top of her class, relentless in her work, and unwavering in her belief that justice wasn't just a word carved into marble walls. It was something you fought for. But in that moment, none of it seemed to matter. "Miss Carter," the judge said, his voice sharp, impatient, almost bored. "Your repeated objections have wasted this court's time. I am issuing a fine of $5,000 for contempt." A ripple moved through the room. Not loud, just enough to sting. $5,000. Not a warning. Not a reprimand. A punishment. Ava swallowed slowly. "Your Honor, I was advocating for my client's rights. And you were out of line," he cut in, already reaching for his pen. "Consider this a lesson in courtroom decorum." A lesson. The word echoed in her mind as the gavel came down. It wasn't the money that hurt. It was what it meant. The dismissal. The quiet implication that she didn't belong here, that her voice was too much. Too loud, too inconvenient. She nodded once because she had learned long ago that dignity sometimes meant choosing silence when the world expected you to break. But inside, something shifted. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter. But only because the tension inside had been suffocating. Ava walked down the steps slowly, her heels clicking against the stone. Reporters lingered nearby, but none approached her. They never did. She wasn't the kind of story people rushed to tell. Not yet. "Miss Carter." She turned. Her client, Marcus Hill, stood a few feet away. His shoulders were tense, his eyes filled with something between gratitude and guilt. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You didn't deserve that." Ava exhaled, softening. "This isn't on you, Marcus." "It never was." He hesitated. "Most lawyers would have backed down." She gave a faint smile. "Most lawyers aren't me." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus said, "Why didn't you just let it go?" It was a fair question. Ava looked back at the courthouse doors, then at the city stretching out beyond them. "Because letting it go would have been easier," she said. "And easy isn't always right." That night, Ava sat alone in her apartment, the city lights flickering through her window. The fine notice lay on the table in front of her, stark and official. $5,000. She could pay it. It would hurt, but she could manage. That wasn't the point. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mentor, Diane. "I heard what happened. Call me." Ava stared at the screen for a long moment before dialing. "He crossed a line," Diane said without preamble. "You know that, right?" Ava leaned back against the couch. "Judges have discretion." "Not like that." Silence settled between them. "You could file a complaint?" Diane continued. "There are ways to challenge this." Ava closed her eyes. She knew that. She had spent years learning the system, its rules, its loopholes, its quiet injustices. She also knew what it meant to push back. "I don't want this to be about me," she said finally. "It already is." Ava opened her eyes again, staring at the fine notice. No, it wasn't. Not entirely. 2 days later, Ava walked into a small community center on the edge of the city. The building was modest, worn in places, but alive with voices and movement. Kids ran through the halls. Volunteers sorted supplies. A woman at the front desk greeted her with a warm smile. "Here for the legal clinic?" she asked. Ava nodded. "Back room." They've been waiting. Inside, a line of people sat quietly, some anxious, some hopeful, all carrying stories heavier than they should have to bear alone. Eviction notices, employment disputes, custody battles, real lives, real stakes. Ava set her bag down and got to work. For hours, she listened, advised, explained, helped. Not for money, not for recognition, just because someone needed her. Near the end of the day, an older man approached her table. His hands shook slightly as he handed over a stack of papers. "I don't understand any of this," he said. Ava glanced through the documents and froze. Her heart skipped. This wasn't just paperwork. It was evidence. Clear, undeniable evidence tied to a case she recognized immediately, a case that had passed through Judge Harrison's courtroom. Her courtroom. She looked up at the man. "Where did you get these?" "They sent them to me by mistake," he said. "I tried to return them, but no one would listen." Ava's pulse quickened, because what she was holding wasn't just a clerical error. It was proof of decisions influenced by something they never should have been. Bias, misconduct, patterns that painted a picture no judge could explain away. Her mind raced. This could change everything, not just for her, for dozens, maybe hundreds of people who had stood in that courtroom, believing they had been judged fairly. Ava looked at the man again, really looked this time. He wasn't angry. He wasn't seeking revenge. He just wanted to understand, and that's when it hit her. This wasn't about destroying anyone. It was about fixing something broken. The complaint process wasn't easy. It never was. There were forms, reviews, quiet. Resistance from people who preferred things to stay exactly as they were. But Ava didn't back down. Not this time. She submitted everything, carefully, thoroughly, with a precision that left no room for dismissal. Weeks passed. Then months. And one morning, the news broke. An investigation had been launched. Judge Harrison was being reviewed for misconduct. The same reporters who had ignored her before now crowded outside the courthouse. Cameras flashing, voices calling her name. "Miss Carter, do you have a statement?" She paused, just for a moment. Then she stepped forward. "This isn't about me," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This is about accountability, about making sure the system works for everyone, not just some." "Did the fine play a role in your decision?" another reporter asked. Ava thought about that. About the gavel, the dismissal, the quiet humiliation. "It reminded me why I do this," she said simply. The hearing was different this time. Not because the room had changed, but because the truth had. Judge Harrison sat at the bench, but not in control, not untouchable. Just a man facing the consequences of his actions. Ava didn't feel triumph as she watched. She felt something quieter, something steadier. Justice, not perfect, not complete, but real. Afterward, as the courthouse emptied, Ava stepped outside once more. The same steps, the same city, but everything felt different. "Miss Carter." She turned. It was Judge Harrison. No robe, no gavel, just a man. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said, "I was wrong." The words hung in the air, heavy, unexpected. Ava studied him. Not with anger, not even with satisfaction, just with honesty. "Yes," she said. "You were." He nodded, his gaze dropping. "I can't undo what I've done." "No," Ava agreed. "But you can choose what you do next." He looked at her then, really looked. "Why didn't you come after me sooner?" he asked. "You had the chance." Ava thought about the community center, the people who sat across from her, trusting her with their stories. "I wasn't looking for someone to blame," she said. "I was looking for a way to help." Something in his expression shifted, subtle, but real. "Thank you," he said quietly. Ava didn't respond right away, because forgiveness wasn't something you handed out easily. But understanding? That was different. She gave a small nod. Then she turned and walked away. Weeks later, a check arrived in the mail. $5,000. The fine returned in full. Ava stared at it for a long moment before setting it aside. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. "The clinic could use more resources," she said. "I'd like to make a donation." Because in the end, it was never about the money, or the fine, or even the man who had tried to silence her. It was about something bigger. The quiet, powerful truth that one voice, steady, compassionate, unyielding, could change more than just a courtroom. It could change lives, and sometimes even hearts.